Today on Callout, Kent Harrison Sar deals with darkness and death on a late-night call-out.
We're on our way out to Echo Island. We got a report of an overdue canoe with 3 people missing.
And later, Canadian Forces SARTECs and volunteer aviators team up to search for a missing airplane and its 4 occupants.
The smaller aircrafts can get into those areas that perhaps wouldn't be safe for a larger aircraft.
Monday, 10:13 p.m. Kent Harrison search and rescue converge at a public boat launch in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia.
3 people in a canoe, overdue, supposed to be back at 5 o'clock. They're out on Harrison Lake. It's dark now.
Brothers Derek and David Patterson and David's wife Michelle had set out on a canoe trip at noon that day and were expected back at 5:30 p.m., nearly 5 hours ago. They were reported missing by their sister, Amanda Fox. Amanda and her husband Stan had already done a search of their own.
We drove up around the lake, figuring maybe, you know, they might have tipped over and they landed on the shore, but they didn't feel like walking or carrying their canoe all the way back.
A small vessel capsizing would not have been an unusual occurrence on Harrison Lake. Its unpredictable conditions are notorious.
In any small boat, not just a canoe, in anything less than 12 feet, you'd find that once you got out into the southern part of the lake, you'd find it pretty choppy. And it's an ugly chop. It's not just a bunch of breakers. It's just all over the place.
The trio had planned to spend the day at Echo Island, a largely uninhabited spot 4 kilometers north of their launching point.
Echo Island is just far enough away with the binoculars I had, we could have seen them if they're on their way back, which we didn't see anything.
With no sign of their missing loved ones and no boat to take them to the island, Stan and Amanda dialed 911 to request search and rescue.
My 2 brothers and my sister-in-law.
It is now past 10 p.m., pitch black, and Kent Harrison Sar are launching their 20-foot aluminum boat, the Shearwater. Their 27-foot jet boat, the Spirit of Harrison, is already in the water warming up. Inside their mobile command center, search manager Neil Brewer has an idea of where the missing canoeists may be.
Could be. My guess is they're beach somewhere, tuckered out and afraid to paddle at night. Okay.
Yeah. Is there anywhere they could actually stay there?
Since the eastern side of Echo Island is dotted with cottages and people, the lost canoeists are most likely either stranded on the uninhabited southern tip or on Marguerite and Camille Islands. Neil sends the Spirit of Harrison to scan these areas, while the smaller Shearwater is tasked to search around the mainland.
We could see the search and rescue lights from our front porch, and so we were just kind of watching and waiting and, you know, hoping everything was fine.
Before long, the crew of the Shearwater spots some items floating in the water.
Like cooler bag.
A few short minutes later, they find a canoe paddle, another ominous sign.
Anything from the Spirit?
Almost simultaneously, Command receives a report from the Spirit crew, now searching the shoreline of Echo Island.
We circled the islands, 2 little islands, then proceeded around the southern tip of Echo Island, and within 10 minutes we had spotted the canoe. At that point I panned my searchlight up the shore and spotted what appeared to be someone laying there. I wasn't close enough to really see what it was. Then I thought, oh boy, here we go.
Found 1 subject on shore, and we're going in to see if we can find the other 2 subjects. Over.
As the Spirit goes in for a closer look, Dan hears people shouting out to the crew from high above on the rocks. Just then, the Shearwater arrives on scene. 2 subjects are seen scrambling down the rocks to join Dan and his team on the beach. Everyone converges around the inert figure of Derek Patterson.
Need an ambulance? What exactly happened?
I was kind of torn. This is something new for me, that the subjects had to go, like, we had to go right down past the brother on the shore. And then as we got down there, the other boat came in right then. So then we had everybody right there. And it was kind of a strange situation, strange scenario.
Meanwhile, Command is looking for an update.
Command, Shearwater, go ahead.
Yeah, just looking for an update on their status, whether we need any medical attention at this end.
We have one code for it. Other two are okay.
Subject code 4, confirm.
That's affirmative.
I didn't expect that we would be dealing with any deceased persons that night. I think I was hopeful that these people were sat on a beach somewhere and it had simply got dark on them and they were waiting for daylight to come home.
Command, sir. I think at this point, Shearwater stay on scene with the code 4, and the Spirit brings the other two subjects back. I think it would be a little more comfortable in the cabin on the Spirit just to keep them warm.
The team is shaken, but they focus on the task at hand. Get the survivors warmed up and off the island.
We have Michelle and David on board, transporting them back to you. Over.
The Shearwater crew will remain on scene with the deceased subject. As it turns out, large waves from passing boats had capsized the Patterson's canoe. Unable to flip the canoe upright, they decide to swim about 200 meters back to Echo Island in the frigid waters.
We were holding onto the boat and started kicking our feet as much as we could. And it was really cold, and Derek, he didn't have much layer of clothing, so I don't think he was kicking as fast as he should be.
When one of the oars started floating away, Derek decided to go after it, but he struggled to swim back to the canoe.
We could almost touch each other. That's how close he was.
All three were wearing PFDs, but had no protection against the glacial-fed waters of Harrison Lake. Before long, Derek succumbs to hypothermia.
We pulled the boat in. David went back into the water to go grab Derek, and then he pulled him in and started CPR, and nothing was happening. I came over and saw David crying because he said he's dead, and I couldn't believe it. I thought he was unconscious or something. I thought he was still alive. I could see boats going by. I was waving my hands just to get anybody's attention, and nothing.
Night set in. They sat in shock, trying to warm up, staring out at the twinkling lights of Harrison Hot Springs. The tragic turn of events playing over and over in their minds. Then, Kent Harrison SAR came to the rescue.
So, Rita, he says his sister just lives across the street.
Yeah, but the officer's here. We're waiting for the ambulance. Can somebody take him?
After bringing David and Michelle to dry land, the Kent Harrison search and rescue team goes back out to recover the deceased subject as well as the canoe. Their night won't end until 2 in the morning. Tonight, Kent Harrison has brought some comfort and closure to a family that now begins another journey. A journey of grief and remembrance. For Kent Harrison, it's yet another chapter in a book of rescues written daily in Canada's vast but unforgiving landscape.
I think the group that we have, some of them have been with us for as long as 25 years. They're very seasoned, they're very empathetic, they're family people. They're certainly not heroes, they're not out there like Rambo. They're just very good, I think, genuine people who can size up a situation and know how to deal with it.
Now, Canadian Forces SARTECs and volunteer aviators search for a missing airplane and its 4 occupants.
If it's later during the search, we'll be using helicopters and hoist the SARTEC to the side.
In the heart of the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia, a dozen aircraft are busy scouring the mountains in search of a missing plane. A Piper PA-24 Comanche and its 4 occupants were reported overdue 7 days ago. Somewhere along its intended flight path from Penticton to Victoria, the plane had disappeared from radar and never arrived at its destination.
Our first goal is to go there and sweep the area from a high altitude, looking at any radio contact and any electronic searches, which is also part of listening out for the emergency locator beacons.
Search and rescue crews have been combing these mountains for a week. With no distress call or emergency beacon signal detected, the plane could be anywhere in a very large area.
In all the years that I've been searching, I know like BC is the most challenging area to conduct searches. We have very tall trees, we have deep valleys, high mountains. This is a very difficult area, and I mean, it's a large area that we're searching.
Behind this massive search effort are not only military crews, but civilian ones as well. Civilians such as Dave Qualley, a private pilot from Vancouver.
For me, this is day 2. I've just joined the search yesterday, so in some ways I'm a little fresher than some of the other pilots, so it's going to give me a chance to give them some relief so they can take a day or 2 off.
Which aircraft are up from here that will be coming back today?
The civilians gathered here at the Kelowna Airport all belong to the Civil Air Search and Rescue Association, CASERA, a volunteer organization with over 2,500 members across Canada.
CASERA's role in search and rescue is to provide supplemental air capability for searches, whether it be helping the Canadian military do air searches for downed aircraft, or whether it be helping the RCMP find missing persons.
CASERA volunteers contribute by piloting their own plane or by acting as navigator or spotter. A typical search crew is made up of 1 pilot, 1 navigator, and 2 spotters. Naturally, a pilot must be qualified to fly a plane. A navigator, on the other hand, must undergo standard training, but does not need to have a pilot's license.
Their job is to keep track of the maps, navigate the plane to get me to the search area, and once we're in the search area, to document the area we cover.
Anyone with normal vision can be a spotter. A spotter's job consists of visually scanning the search area for any clue.
Their sole job is to look out the window and nothing but. So in a way, they're the most important people on board the plane, because without them, we're just out flying around.
Spotting may seem straightforward, but an enormous amount of focus is required, especially when the missing plane is small, like the Comanche in today's search.
It's very tiring being a spotter. They like to change them off every so many minutes. It can range from 15 minutes to half an hour.
One of the crews described the searching as looking through a head of broccoli. And it was a great analogy because certainly the types of trees and the shrubs indicate that there's a lot of space below, but with the canopies this time of year, it's hard to see through the treetops.
Trained spotters are a valuable asset and are therefore often called upon to sit on military aircraft.
We sit in these lovely bubble windows and try hopefully to find the missing object.
The missing Comanche and its 4 occupants could be anywhere along the Penticton-Victoria corridor. To keep track of the progress, the large search area is divided into grids, which are assigned to the crews. It's then up to each individual navigator to construct their flight plans.
They would then plan how they would approach their particular area. If it's mountainous, where they would begin, where they do the high peaks first, and then do contours around these peaks, and then do the valleys. So a lot of planning and consideration goes into how you approach your particular area.
Pilot Mark Payer and navigator Nick Tarasiuk have established their route for the day. Like the other crews, they will conduct the air search at 3 different altitudes, starting high up and working their way down. Initially, they will fly at 450 meters above ground, allowing a visual range of 5 kilometers on either side of the plane. If nothing is spotted, the pilot will fly lower to the ground, narrowing the visual range to 1.5 kilometers on each side. In the final stages, aircraft will fly at a mere 150 meters above the ground, so that the spotters can scan the area in more detail.
That's where we're at on day 7, getting closer, lower to the ground, getting in between the trees, and trying to pick up any anomalies in the landscape, such as a broken tree, a swath cut, something that looks unnatural that a trained spotter would know to look for.
12:45 p.m. Crews have had no luck locating the missing aircraft in the morning's assigned search grids.
It's a new area for us, so no joy.
After quickly refueling their planes and their stomachs, they're back out again. A number of challenges have been complicating this particular search. Friends of the missing pilot are offering a $10,000 reward for finding the wreckage. Independent searchers have taken to the skies and are posing a safety risk to military and Casera crews. Furthermore, smoke from neighboring wildfires is reducing visibility.
This has probably been one of the worst fire seasons since 2003 for British Columbia. It creates a haze in the air, which lessens our visual acuity. It's important to keep situal awareness when you're flying low level in the mountains and being able to see all the aircraft. It also hampers our vision on the ground too, and that's an important factor.
Forest fires, weather conditions, and air traffic are closely monitored by the search coordinators from inside their temporary base. Besides coordinating and tasking crews, Casera also works hand in glove with military search and rescue. If a Casera plane spots the missing Comanche aircraft or any of its occupants, search coordinators will notify the Canadian forces. The SARTECs will then parachute to the site to rescue the subjects. In this incident, however, the likelihood of survivors is very low. Another approach will be taken.
If it's later during the search, we'll be using helicopters and hoist the SARTEC to the site and conduct the investigation on the location.
In this particular call-out, the military is highly involved. But in some cases, particularly when the incident is in a remote area, Casera will perform on its own.
They understand the local area weather patterns. They know the habits of the local pilots. They know the choke points for weather and VFR routes and the like.
We're very mobile. We can pretty well operate anywhere. As long as we have an aircraft and a crew, we can set up in any hangar. And all we need, is just a place with a phone and where we can lay out our maps and we can plan a search.
Sarah Base, go ahead.
A lot of those cases will turn out to be false alarms. So we can react to that fairly quickly, determine it's a false alarm, and save the Canadian military from launching some of their heavier assets.
Operating a military aircraft costs $8,000 to $10,000 per hour versus $180 to $230 for a Casera plane. That's a big savings for the taxpayer, making Casera an extremely cost-effective and versatile asset in search and rescue missions. The sun is fading. Search teams must stand down for another day.
Even though you still see daylight out, we're realizing that with shadows and everything, the effectiveness starts dropping off at about 5 or 6 o'clock.
Everyone is feeling the fatigue of a week-long search, but they're not ready to give up yet.
Off again tomorrow morning. We'll probably do another couple of sorties. So, yeah.
A lot of energy, especially amongst volunteers. They've got this gung-ho attitude. They want to get out there and find people. And it's hard to slow them down or tell them to take some time to themselves. So every once in a while we have to start looking at each other, making sure that fatigue isn't setting in. And the long-term players, we tell them to take a day off every once in a while and try to bring in new, fresh blood. And if we need to call you back again, we'll give you a couple hours notice at least.
You know, everyone's hoping that we'll come across more clues with investigations and find something tomorrow with the good weather ahead.
And sure enough, the Piper Comanche is finally spotted the next morning, on day 8 of the search. The wreckage is on a mountainside near Penticton. There are no survivors. The searcher's job is done. It's now up to investigators to look into the cause of the crash. As for the members of Casera, it's time for them to get back to their lives.
All volunteers, they put in their own time and they work, some of them. So it's a matter of them juggling their job and volunteering to do this, and oftentimes away from home.
Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Today on Callout, Parks Canada Search and Rescue deal with injured hikers and bad news bears on the West Coast Trail.
So we're just at Chihuahua Cabin today, looking for some signs of wildlife in this area. We have a closure.
And later, Long Beach surf guards prepare for a busy Labor Day weekend in Pacific Rim National Park.
Like you're on the go all the time. There's always someone in the water.
Saturday, 10:30 a.m., Port Renfrew, British Columbia.
Okay, how long ago did you see him?
Two fishermen approach a Parks Canada rescue team to report a hiker in distress on Vancouver Island's rugged West Coast Trail. Gil Villaseñor from Southern California has slipped on some roots, injuring his right leg. Bruised and swollen, he cannot continue the challenging 75-kilometer hike and needs to be evacuated.
They were out near Callout Cove along the West Coast Trail and were flagged down by a couple in their 50s waving a red flag. They went in to investigate, and the gentleman was complaining of a blown knee. We're already in the Rigid Hull and we're already on the water, so we're going to head straight out there.
Already loaded with basic medical and rescue equipment, their twin-engine Rigid Hull inflatable boat, or RIB, can take off immediately. They will reach the subject in approximately 25 minutes. Team leader Jeff Caro and SAR trainee Sibylla Helms are part of a 5-member team of Parks Canada rescue specialists who live and work out of their station in Port Renfrew at the south end of the West Coast Trail. With an average of 100 callouts during the May to October hiking season, 2 members are always on call 24/7. Depending on the situation, they rescue by boat, helicopter, or on foot, keeping a range of gear ready to go at a moment's notice. Outside of Canadian Forces SARTECs parachuting or hoisting in from aircraft, Parks Canada Search and Rescue is the only medical help available in this unforgiving territory. Between rescues, they spend a lot of time working on all aspects of this world-renowned trail to keep it safe.
Right here we are at Thrasher Cove. This is a site where we've had in the past some major accidents on this little slope. There was at one point a stair system that took hikers down this way over this rocky, muddy mess, but it was blown away by a tree and hasn't been replaced just yet. It doesn't look all that bad, but it gets worse once you're on it. So once hikers get committed to this slope, that's when things go wrong. We thought we'd be able to be okay without it. Then we had a major wreck here last summer that involved multiple head injuries, and so obviously we got to get this going again. The trail crew's on it. They're going to be out in the next while to replace it, but until then we're going to put up just some ski slope style fencing just to direct hikers away from coming down this area.
So we're just at Chihuahua Cabin today, and I'm looking for some signs of wildlife in this area. We have a closure.
There are significant bear, cougar, and wolf populations living in the region. When they start crossing paths with hikers, search and rescue sometimes becomes search and relocate.
Really large bear. Oh yeah, you can see it here. That's the forepaw. Probably male.
Those types of animals, there's kind of an escalation of risk, and our job is we try to raise awareness to the hikers and educate people on how to deter those animals before they become a high risk.
And no sign of the bear at Chihuahua?
Unfortunately, sometimes the animal has to be put down. Luckily, we don't have to do that very often, but it is definitely a possibility and we train for it.
We're at the Port Renfrew Rifle Range. We're here to practice with the 22 rifles today. We've had a lot of bear activity on the trail, so we're just keeping our skills up with shooting and familiarity with the guns.
On the bullseye.
Nice.
Actually, one's in the bullseye. Woo!
Good shooting.
Shannon and I have shot about 80 rounds in the last half an hour, trying to get through a series of different positions and practicing our breathing, our sight picture, our trigger pull, everything we can to get ready in case we do get called to use firearms.
11 a.m. Jeff and Sibylla have arrived at Callout Cove.
See people ashore, but they waved us in, so we're at the right spot. Definitely have people that want us to come ashore and give them a hand. Don't know what yet, so we'll row in and we'll update as the plan changes.
Being a SAR rookie, Sibylla Helms takes the initiative to prep the tender.
My natural instinct is to jump ahead and take on challenges. I love challenges. And so I'm a little bit uber keen sometimes, and that's the dangerous thing, you know, when you teach someone just a little bit and then they get in over their head pretty easily. It's a matter of knowing your limits and safety limits as well.
You said you slipped off some roots?
Yeah, I was just dropped about 4 feet, and I had to put my foot down like this, and I actually flipped over, slipped and tumbled over, landed on my pack and shoulder.
Did you hit your head at all?
No.
Where's the pain? I see a cut there on your knee. Is that
yeah, that's when I fell.
All right.
Yeah, and then it was like, now it's kind of like stiff in here, in the front right here.
He's packed well, he's got great gear, but he's never hiked in these kind of conditions before, and whether he had or not may not have made any difference. He was able to limp to camp that night. His wife gave him massaged his leg and rubbed around his knee to try to help loosen it up, and it was awfully stiff and sore for him. He took some pills, so he was in rough shape.
It sends the pain right in here.
Okay. Any problem moving your ankle at all?
No, the only problem I had down there was yesterday all day. It started throbbing,
In here?
Aching, like a really bad ache. But after her massaging and the Motrin, got up I slept great last night. No Motrin.
Yeah.
My leg, I was perfect. So I was like, yeah, we're out of here. And then as soon as I walked about.
And can you wiggle your toes?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any fractures. The pain does radiate down the inside of his leg. And so we're going to splint it up because there's a bit of bouncing around on the boat once we get out there.
I've been waiting like 8 years to come on this trip.
Oh, man.
It's still going to be here once you're all healed up.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm going to bring a llama with me next time.
We should open up the season 1 year for just people who've had injuries. You don't have them all come out. Kind of have a big reunion. Their ego is more bruised than anything. Their pride's hurt. He felt bad about calling us. He felt bad about having to leave the trail early. It was typical that way. And poor guy. He was just, super nice guy. It's just we get hiking guides. They come out here and they get taken out. It doesn't matter,
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. So it's just after 6, and we're back at the Port Renfrew Search and Rescue Station, and Gil and his wife are safely set up in a hotel, the last room available tonight. So they're all good. They're going to stay in Port Renfrew for a couple of days and wait for their hiking partners to get off the trail. And that wraps it up for another rescue on West Coast Trail.
119 from 6-8, 119.
Wednesday, 10:15 a.m. Parks Canada rescue team members Danny Thompson and Sibylla Helms have been called out to evacuate an injured hiker off the West Coast Trail. They're stationed offshore at S.O.S Creek, kilometer 17, and in radio contact with 2 of the First Nations trail guardians who live in the area and help injured hikers get medical attention.
We'll be there in about 3.5 to 4 minutes. Okay, thanks a lot, Lonnie. 6-8.
We got a call that there's a fellow, his name's Bruno, with a sore left knee or a calf. So he's not quite sure what it is, but called us yesterday to give us the heads up, and called again this morning to confirm that he needs to be evacuated. He can't hike any further.
We've got a real foggy day, but fortunately for us, it's an extremely calm day. This is kind of typical summer seas, low swell, no wind.
Sibylla arrives on the beach and is met by the trail guardians. They have escorted Bruno down to the rendezvous point, allowing the rest of his hiking party to continue the trek south along the trail. Sibylla performs a primary medical survey and preps Bruno for transport. It's a quick trip out to the rib where they transfer Bruno, store the tender, and begin the 30-minute trip back to the SAR base in Port Renfrew. It's a grab and go. A few days later, Jeff Caro and 30-year veteran SAR manager Rick Holmes are preparing for yet another trail evacuation when Bruno drops by the station. He's been to the local clinic while waiting for his hiking partners to finish the trail and has received some interesting news about his sprain.
Like a band up in here. I thought I pulled a muscle really bad. And
a little more than that.
Didn't hear a crack or didn't hear anything.
That's quite a break.
That's awesome.
And displaced a little bit too, and
That must have hurt.
A piece came off there.
Yeah.
Creating its own path of bruised bodies, broken bones, and shattered egos, the West Coast Trail is no easy walk in the park. No one wants to turn back, but when they have to, the Parks Canada West Coast Trail Search and Rescue Team is there to help. Now, the surf's up and the guards are out.
It's, you know, summer holidays.
Friday, 12:20 p.m. Parks Canada surf guards spot a novice surfer caught in an aggressive rip current, struggling to get back to shore. Two of the surf rescue specialists get suited up, while a third remains focused on the subject from the tower. They launch the jet ski from the beach. One guard heads out to rescue the subject, while the other stays on the beach ready to provide backup if required. Within seconds, the exhausted surfer climbs onto the rescue board and is towed through the rip current towards shore. This is an exercise. Parks Canada surf guards Doug Palfrey, David Redpath, and Mike Wald are preparing for a busy Labor Day weekend on Long Beach in Pacific Rim National Park. Located on the southwest coast of Vancouver Island, between Ucluelet and Tofino, Long Beach is renowned as one of Canada's premier surfing destinations, attracting 1 million visitors each year to its spectacular beauty and punishing surf.
Traveled all over the world, and this is one of my favorite places. Surfed in Costa Rica, surfed here. Not that good, but love it.
Surfing is becoming an increasingly popular sport to those who seek the exhilarating experience of harnessing Mother Nature's awesome force. But it can be quite dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
It's probably 80–85% newbies in the water, and then probably 15% really experienced old dogs, and it's busy. You know, and there's a lot of novices all intermingling with surf schools, with pros, and it's fun, but it can be chaos at times too.
As early bird surfers are gearing up to hit the beach, Parks Canada surf guards prepare their gear and check the morning weather reports at the warden's office.
Right now we've got about a 2-meter swell. It's from the west. We've got some light north or northwesterly winds right now, and they'll be increasing in strength throughout the day. So we'll see some waves down the beach today. We timed it. I think you can go from getting your call to having this in the water in 2 minutes. And it's a great tool to have. Definitely expands our range.
Range is key. The surf guards will respond to calls on a total of 4 of the park's beaches: Radar Beach, Long Beach, Comers Beach, and Wickaninnish Beach, a 25-kilometer stretch between Cox and Quisitas points. It's a huge responsibility for the 2 to 3 guards on shift each day.
When you get hot sunny days,
combined with big swell and lots of people, and throw in a weekend, or even worse yet, a long weekend, like you're on the go all the time. There's always someone in the water.
To help prevent a high number of incidents from overwhelming the surf guards, warning signs have been placed at all beach access points to increase public awareness of the inherent dangers. But it continues to be an ongoing battle to keep people safe.
You know, everybody's surf crazy now, and rank beginners come to the beach and they look out and they may glance at the sign, but they see people in wetsuits, people with surfboards out there. And they don't realize that some of those people actually know how to surf and know how to use the rip to get back out after catching a wave, so out they go. It's, you know, summer holidays.
A riptide is actually a rip current. It's a strong channel of water flowing seaward from close to shore, typically through the surf line. Rip currents can be caused by shifting sandbars, crossing wave trains, or natural obstacles. In this case, Lovekin Rock.
This is where all our incidents take place, or the bulk of them is right here out at Lovekin Rock. And the rip you can see today, it's always here. It's mainly to the south of the rock, and if you just follow along, you'll see a little different texture in the water, a bit of a rougher surface. Now that's the rip working its way south, and then once it's outside the influence of the surf, it just dissipates and fans out. If someone's caught in it, they will swim and paddle against it till they drop. If you're trying to swim straight back in, it's like swimming against a small river. You just tire yourself out. Whereas all they have to do is paddle over 30 to 50 meters and they're right out of the rip, and then use the waves to bring you back in.
David places additional signs on the beach, alerting people of the dangerous rip current around Lovekin Rock. But they seem to have little effect, gauging by the number of swimmers and surfers in the area.
Probably out of that 111 people, there's probably over 100, just over 100 of them that have never been in the water before. So surfing's a brand new experience for them.
Like the waves are really good at this spot right here, definitely. That all of a sudden they'll start getting bigger and bigger, and then it's really fun. Yeah, right by the rock.
It's a little crowded, so you gotta watch out for people and make sure you're not getting in people's way, but gotta share the waves too, so.
As the density of surfers in the water increases, the concern shifts from the rip current to injuries sustained from surfboards or other surfers.
They're hit by their surfboard, they're hit by somebody else's surfboard, they're cut with a fin, bumps and scrapes, somebody hits their head on the bottom. Those type of injuries happen on busier days. When you have more people in a smaller area, they're more likely to be hit by somebody else's board.
Now there's a few guys out here that can surf in this group, so they're not really much of a concern, although we do watch them. It's the people on the rental equipment. Those numbers haven't really showed up, but they will throughout the day.
Indeed they will. In nearby Tofino, business is booming for local surf shops, equipping a seemingly endless stream of newbie surfers with wetsuits and boards for the sunny weekend. Hopefully, they'll take notice of the wave hazard signs along the highway used to access the various beaches in the park.
When you get big waves, the water comes in and has to push out the sides of the bay, or during a rip in the middle of the bay, and a novice isn't going to know what to look for. They can be super well-intentioned, well-meaning, trying to be safe, and yet they can still get shot out on a freight train out to Vietnam.
It's early afternoon, and Long Beach is filling up with surfers and families eager to hit the water. The surf guards prepare for a long and busy afternoon.
It's a big beach and there's a lot to watch, and it's tiring too. There's eye fatigue, so you rotate through every hour. If you have 3 people on, while one person's guarding, the other person could be in the water, and then the third guy, he's you know, kind of a floater. If there's first aid, deals that, he's back up. It all depends on what the risk is for the day and judge it accordingly.
Guarding from the tower requires a keen eye and the utmost concentration. there are a lot of things to be watching out for.
Children probably are our biggest concern, so are they supervised? Are they well equipped? How long they've been out in the water? You know, if they've been out for 3 or 4 hours, chances are, you know, they're getting really tired, and so there's a higher chance of an incident. So.
Then there are the surfers.
Body language is huge. Their confidence or their ability to paddle their board, their stability on the board, where they're paddling out, how they're catching waves, you know, if they're staying in a really, really tight-knit group. Also, maybe if, you know, earlier we had maybe seen the possibility of some drinking or something on the beach. It's not just necessarily the water that we're watching the entire beach.
If something's happening, it happens really quick here. You're watching, everything's fine, and then you see something catches your eye and you're, oh, okay, yeah, and then it's like, it's go.
The reason why we don't do many rescues is because we paddle up to people 10 minutes before they need it. We simply paddle up to them, convince them that there's a better place to be, and sometimes it go on your way to go tell someone that they are in a bad area, it actually turns into a rescue. Or someone else near them, while you're talking to them, winds up getting pulled out and you're already there.
You know, there's very few people in Canada that live near the ocean or live near to a surf beach. And ocean safety is new to a lot of people. So it's getting that information to them in a positive way.
If we weren't surfers, this job would probably wouldn't be very enjoyable. I mean, we get to spend a lot of time in the water. We all love what we're doing.
It doesn't get any better as far as a place to work. You're outside and being in the surf is great.
Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Today on Callout, Columbia Valley Search and Rescue scour the rugged backcountry for a missing field researcher. But there's a twist. The researcher is scouring the backcountry as well for Bigfoot, the legendary Sasquatch.
You don't know who this person is, what they're really like.
And later, Sundry Search and Rescue mounts up for missing subjects in Alberta's sprawling backcountry.
We have spotted their subject.
Monday, 9 a.m. Columbia Valley SAR manager Steve Talsma receives a call for a missing field researcher.
Hello, Steve speaking.
Todd Standing, a 37-year-old Albertan man, had set out alone on a 5-day expedition near Kootenay National Park. He was reported missing by his colleague 48 hours after their scheduled rendezvous.
In that time frame, he could end up in one of the national parks. He could have crossed into Alberta, and my first thoughts were like he could be anywhere.
The southwestern region of the Canadian Rockies, straddling the BC-Alberta border, is renowned for its beauty and virtually untouched wilderness. Kootenay, Yoho, and Banff National Parks represent close to 8,000 square kilometers of this vast expanse. Access to the area is extremely limited, other than a handful of logging and mining roads.
The details we were given is that he didn't have a tent, but he had a sleeping bag and a tarp. He'd been to this area, but wasn't real familiar with it. Okay, I'll get our team together and...
Then, Steve gets some interesting news.
They went on to say it was someone looking for Sasquatch or Bigfoot, which is, yeah, a strange one.
Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, is derived from the word Sesquak, which means wild man in the Coast Salish First Nations language. This mythical ape-like creature is said to be between 2 and 3 meters tall and covered in dark brown or reddish hair. Many skeptics discount its existence, and any sightings to be a combination of folklore, misidentification, and hoax rather than a real animal.
When you Google his name, it comes up, like it finishes his name for you, and then says Bigfoot. You get like Todd, Stitt, and then the rest finishes.
Todd had been featured prominently in the media and on numerous websites petitioning for the species protection of Gigantopithecus. His goal for this expedition was to capture high-quality footage of Bigfoot. He and his Sylvanic team had tried on numerous occasions to photograph the furry giant, with marginal success.
What he was looking for was Bigfoot. You don't know who this person is, what they're really like, and not normal for most of us.
Columbia Valley SAR preps their gear and heads out to Kootenai National Park. Once reaching the Mount Assiniboine area, the team checks in with an open-pit mine to see if they had spotted the missing subject. No luck. Next, they check out an outfitter's camp further up the road. Still no sign of Todd. They double back and check out yet another outfitter's camp, but there's still no indication that anyone has been there. The team drives to the nearby trailhead and finds a logbook entry that matches with what Todd's colleague had reported. Finally, some progress.
Most missing people will stick on a trail or near a trail. This gentleman, being a field researcher, his goal was to stay off trail and be hidden. So it really changed our approach and how we were thinking.
It's pretty dense bush here. It'd be hard to find a clue unless you're standing right over it.
With little indication of Todd's intended route, they resort to basic search theory.
He's going to need water. So we had 2 team members go up the trail along the creek, thinking his camp would be somewhere near the water source. One of the team members bent down to tie her shoe, looked up off the trail maybe 20 meters, and there was a sleeping bag.
Base, this is John.
The dog team was sent in to do the initial search. Didn't find anything, went down to the creek and did a more extensive search along the creek. Again, no sign.
Darkness falls, and the team has no choice but to call off the search until the next morning. They leave Todd's sleeping bag at the trailhead and a note telling him that they're searching for him and to stay put. Tuesday, 5:45 a.m.
Grab your packs, let's go.
Kimberly Search and Rescue has been called out to assist in the search. The team musters at the SAR Hall and heads out to rendezvous with Columbia Valley Search and Rescue in Invermere, a 2-hour drive north from Kimberly.
I had no idea that we had Bigfoot on our side of the mountains here, so I figured it was going to be a pretty interesting search.
So you're going to be lifted into here.
In Invermere, Kimberly SAR get the rundown, then continue on to meet up with the Columbia Valley team already on site. Then the news comes in. The subject has walked out.
They were all pumped up, ready to go, and to get that call, and it's like, oh, geez, didn't even make it.
Yeah, we are up the mountain. Subject has been located, so we're just looking to turn around, but we just want to talk to Steve before we head back.
The teams turn around and head back to base.
At the end of the day, if it's a good outcome like this was, he walked out of the woods on his own, that's okay. We're happy with that.
How are you going to find the most elusive animal on the planet, probably, because science, has virtually no knowledge of this species. How are you going to find it if you're not going to go out into the depths, deep, dark depths of the mountains? You got to get out there. You got to do some work.
Day 1 of Todd's journey to find Bigfoot. He's dropped off at the trailhead, where he'll be picked up 5 days later. He sets up base camp and takes off on his journey.
I only bring what I absolutely have to. So my cameras, I have a little tiny backpack that's just got food in it, and that's it. All my other gear is on my person, and it's tight, and I run, I move. I rock climb when I have to, I jump precipice when I need to. I'll do the best I can to live off the land, like the First Nations people have taught me, so I can survive out there pretty well for a short length of time, My goal was ultimately to not only get a video shot of the day watcher, but to get into the domicile and start seeing if I could see footprints and maybe hair samples and fecal matter and I don't know what else, signs of what they're eating, bones maybe they've left behind from animals they've eaten, I don't know.
After a 2-day venture into the backcountry, Todd is successful in finding a Bigfoot domicile, a well-hidden dwelling where Sasquatches live. He carefully approaches, trying not to alarm the unsuspecting occupants, when he spots the Sasquatch.
This guy walked right into an area where I could film him and shoot him, and that's what I got. I know that's a real animal, and it's real. I know it'll be put through the ringer and whatnot. Eventually, when I can prove the species is real, people will start to understand the reality of it, but it's tremendous evidence for me.
Todd is pleased to have gotten some definitive proof of the elusive giants. Then, he gets an unexpected surprise.
It was a chickadee, a black and white chickadee that gave me away. This chickadee came within about 5 meters or so of me, and he was squawking. I've never seen a chickadee do that. He squawked, and then I could hear the movement around me. When you hear when you hear, you know, okay, I've been found.
With his cover blown, Todd finds himself surrounded by angry Bigfoots.
What happened was he stopped me from going up the corridor. 2 at least came around behind me, picked up my trail, followed up behind, and when they dialed in on me, he moved back, and the game was over. Now it's get out of there. There's probably 3 different ways I can leave this area. If I don't leave the right way, they let me know, because things start coming down the mountain, right? And the intimidation starts. So, okay, I'll go this way. How's that sound? And, you know, they like that, so let me go.
As Todd exits the domicile, he manages to capture some evidence of Bigfoot intimidation tactics as a boulder is thrown at him.
And you see it go by you and smash and crash into the ground. You start thinking, you know, like this is, you know, I don't want to mess with these guys, period. You'll also see like a 400-pound log that was thrown at me. I'd love to have one of those skeptics there when I'm being pushed out of a domicile. You come out and experience what I've seen, you will be a believer. You don't need to see film. You don't need to have hair come back, analyzed as DNA unknown primate. You will realize really fast, bears don't do that. Cougars can't do that. A man couldn't do that, period. Unless he had, I don't know, a whole crew out there with slingshots and special, you know, the whole Roman Empire is using, you know, it's just not gonna happen.
Within a few hours of his retreat from the Sasquatch domicile, he's confronted by a grizzly bear.
He was looking at me, he was dialed in on me.
Todd gets out of there.
I went fast, keeping him in mind where he was. And then I hit the rock face, and I started to rock climb. Got to a spot in the mountain where I felt relatively safe. I never saw the bear after that at all.
After his grisly experience, Todd tries to get some sleep, but...
The bloody chipmunks, they're crazy, those chipmunks. It seemed like every time I'd get to sleep for 5 minutes, the bloody chipmunk would jump right on my bag, or they'd come and steal your flashlights or anything, and I get a little pissed off at them.
By now, Todd's colleague had come and gone. Search and rescue was on site, and Todd could see them in the valley below.
They were in unmarked vehicles, and I could see them, but I had no idea they were there for me. I just thought they were hunters. And so I saw them there, they were there for a while, they left. The next day came, I saw those 2 vehicles drive up again, so I just went down the mountain.
Todd meets up with a very surprised search and rescue team.
They were just very reassuring, they took extremely good care of me. The RCMP, they grilled me about, you know, everything that had gone on.
This is the tree line that becomes a maze that bears, black bears, and grizzly bears love because they're fantastic ambush spots. And this tree maze goes all the way around.
There was a grizzly bear, you know, there were tracks for the bear. How do you hoax a wild grizzly bear coming up on you just at the worst possible time?
Indeed. No sooner does he escape a band of angry Bigfoot than he's being chased by a wild grizzly bear, only to be harassed by a gang of crazy chipmunks.
I wouldn't play a game with that. It's not funny. I take this so seriously because, you know, search and rescue might get called. You know, the police might get involved, and that's very, very serious.
We're not here to judge. We got called for a missing person. We responded for a missing person. At the end of the day, he walked out. He was healthy, he was fine, and he got to go home. And I guess that's all that we can hope for.
Now, horses lead the way for search and rescue in the foothills of Alberta.
We do have access to a lot of ATVs, quads, and ground searchers, but there are specific circumstances where the horse is favorable.
Thursday, 3:02 p.m. in the foothills of Alberta's untamed backcountry. Search and rescue was called out to Cartier Creek, a natural recreation area 22 kilometers southwest of Sundre. A woman has been reported missing by her husband after their canoe flipped in the Red Deer River. Swept downriver, she could be anywhere in a very large area. Sundry SAR has a lot of ground to cover. To assist the ground search teams, they activate a very specialized unit, their Search and Rescue Equine Team. This is an exercise which demonstrates the unique role equine SAR plays in the multifaceted search and rescue world. In these hard-to-reach areas with limited road access, equine teams are very effective in locating subjects and transporting them to safety.
We do have access to a lot of ATVs, quads, and ground searchers, but there are specific circumstances where the horse is favorable, and that usually ends up in the mountains and the steep ground.
Marion Brown, a long-time search and rescue volunteer, confidently leads her horse team down a steep slope.
We can get across the rivers, we can get through really gnarly rocks and stones and down some really steep banks. You know, given a nice trail, we can cover 8 to 10 miles an hour at a nice comfortable trot and go for probably 10 miles at that speed, an average condition horse.
ATVs are also commonly used in this type of terrain. However, a driver has to look ahead much of the time, increasing the possibility of driving right past an injured subject. Alternatively, riders on horseback can search using a full 360-degree view around them, while the horses effectively guide themselves over challenging terrain. The height advantage also plays a vital role in expanding the searcher's field of view. Sitting at close to 2.5 meters above ground level, riders can see over many natural obstacles and generally see farther than searchers on foot.
This kind of shows how deep this stuff is and how really difficult it is to see because it's quite thick and quite high, and so we have very limited vision when we're walking. And likewise, a quad would not be able to negotiate through the thick brush here.
Because horses are prey animals, they are constantly listening for strange noises.
He's picked something up. There's something going on here. They're also quiet, so we can hear a subject calling or crying. We can hear those kinds of things. And a horse will often tell us when there's either danger or possibly even a subject. They can hear better than we can, and so sometimes they pick it up before we do. This is the nice thing about horses. They can refuel along the trail. Unlike an ATV or even us, we can't eat bark or branches or grass, but the horses can.
A quick pit stop, and the equine team is back on task. They ride along the river, eyes peeled for the missing canoeist.
Alpha, I believe we have spotted our subject.
2 kilometers later, they spot the subject on the other side of the rushing water.
Helen, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
In this exercise, the subject is hypothermic but responsive. The team follows standard search and rescue protocol. They warm her up and call for backup.
SAR base, this is Alpha 1 medic.
Alpha 2, this is SAR base.
With the subject mounted on a horse for the ride back into town, Sundry SAR's equine unit wraps up another successful training day, reinforcing the beneficial role of horses in search and rescue. Near the town of Olds, Alberta, Marion Brown prepares for a busy day as the equine director of Rock Spring Farms, a multifaceted training facility and stable. In addition to being an active member of Sundry SAR, Marion plays a key role in training other search and rescue riders and their horses.
We'll start with our lateral flexions, give to the bridle exercises. So the horse is giving willingly to the bridle. Let's work on some leg yielding exercises on the circle.
Voice commands are not very effective on horses. Marion emphasizes the importance of riders using touch and pressure in order to communicate.
3 things we need them to do is go where we want, when we want, and how we want. We're using our aids, which is our bridle, our hands. Of course, that controls the reins. A horse learns to respond to our weight in order to go with a certain direction or stop. And our legs. Pressure with our legs tells our horse which direction to move. And then we combine those things as well. And it's amazing what we can actually get a horse to do just by speaking his language, which is touch and pressure.
You spotted something that may be a victim?
In the field, we're using radios, compasses, GPS, so we need to be able to control our horses effectively also with one hand.
Not only do the rider and horse need to learn to work together, they also have to learn to work in groups.
Another thing we practice is our team formations so that the horses get used to working together, they're friendly to each other, and it gives us a chance to practice spacing and speed control so that we can use a grid pattern or whatever we need to effectively search. After we have our basic skills fairly established, then we start to work some obstacles like this that we've set up that's somewhat similar to some things we might encounter in the field. And also it's sort of a test of whether our body control skills are working or not.
Marion runs her horse through a number of obstacles meant to challenge his maneuvering abilities. Some obstacles are meant to simulate narrow paths or trails, while others replicate large rocks or tree stumps.
Horses they're just creeped out by things that aren't normal, and we have to sort of overcome those fears and let them know that as long as they're with us, that they're okay, that they're safe.
Some of Marion's training tools bear rather menacing names.
We've got the milk jug dragon, and that's really frightening to horses. That's really creepy. If they can handle the milk jug dragon, they can handle a lot of stuff.
The more exposure the horses have to man-made sounds and materials in a training environment, the more comfortable they will be when faced with them in the field.
Horses are normally afraid of flapping things, especially around and over their heads. So again, we're just showing him that it's not hurting, it's not compromising him in any way, and again, it's building trust.
The training also emphasizes the importance of predicting or recognizing a horse's behavior.
We have to be able to handle a horse that gets upset by the presence of a bear or, heaven forbid, a deceased out in the field that we might come across. So we have to teach our riders to be safe and effective in the face of all kinds of difficulties out in the field.
Regular practice and realistic training missions establish strong bonds between horse and rider, building a unified mounted SAR team ready to tackle difficult terrain in search of missing persons. Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions. Today on Callout, heavy fog hinders Parks Canada's efforts to rescue an injured hiker off the West Coast Trail.
So we may get turned back. In this case, we don't have a backup plan other than waiting it out.
And later, sinking ships and bathtub flips keep the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary on the move.
Simulator team, your instructor.
Victoria Coast Guard Radio, this is Auxiliary.
Wednesday, 10:30 a.m., Port Renfrew, British Columbia. Parks Canada rescue specialists Shannon Dixon and Jeff Caro arrive at a local sports field. A helicopter is inbound to help them evacuate a hiker from the West Coast Trail.
Going to pick up Kathy DeWolf. She's an injured party, left knee injury, overuse.
Kathy DeWolf from Alberta is unable to continue the grueling 6-day, 75-kilometer hike. She and her hiking partner are at Sequana Cabin, about 40 kilometers north of Port Renfrew. Local First Nations trail workers are assisting the couple and in radio contact with the rescue team. It's sunny here, but very foggy on the coast, and there are large ocean swells making a beach landing by boat too dangerous. There's no guarantee that it will be clear enough for the helicopter to land at the extraction point on the trail.
So we may get turned back. In this case, we don't have a backup plan other than waiting it out. We're going to be limited by fog in this machine. These guys really know the coast. This guy in particular is our best trained rescue pilot, and he could probably get us in there somehow. So we'll see how it goes.
Jeff and Shannon are part of a 5-member team of Parks Canada rescue specialists who live and work out of their station in Port Renfrew at the south end of the West Coast Trail. They rescue by boat, helicopter, and on foot. Today, it's a helicopter, but Jeff has given his seat to Dave Jensen, an Australian Ranger team leader here to exchange life-saving skills with his Canadian counterparts. The flight to the extraction point at Sequana Cabin will take about 20 minutes.
This is like skydiving, isn't it?
While the Australian Ranger doesn't have to worry about great white sharks or crocodiles in BC waters, the rugged coastline and frigid ocean temperatures have their own set of hazards to train for. He's practiced rescue techniques with a few of the First Nations trail guardians who maintain the trails and learned how to beach the tender in large swells.
This one is going to go mid-thigh.
Learning how to load a prone subject into the rib by rolling them over the gunnels is a useful skill in any part of the world. The helicopter approaches Sequana Cabin and flies in low for a landing on the beach.
Probably going to do a full assessment here and look at it, if you don't mind.
We've got trail guardians that represent each of the 3 different First Nations bands that the trail travels through. They do some interpretation of the importance of those areas to their ancestors and to their own cultural practices. They do some light trail maintenance and brushing. They report some of the bigger problems to our full-time trail crew, such as a damaged bridge or a damaged ladder system. And they also are extremely valuable to us in getting information from hikers. A lot of cases, if we get a call that there's an injured hiker somewhere, one of the first things we'll do is see if there's any trail guardians in the area, and if we can get them, they can usually get there quicker than us because a lot of them are out on the trail already, and they can get first-hand information back to us in terms of what's going on out there.
The trail crew had come along and brought them to their cabin and let them camp out overnight. And those guys were really good with them. They told them the whole story about that site. There's, lots of longhouses used to be there, and kind of shared their history with them.
Now, this is where it was really, really sore the first day. It was right in here, and then it started moving down, and it was kind of...
She was pretty stubborn. She didn't want to come off, but her partner was insistent.
My biggest concern was that big patch of black and blue and yellow and green that's been happening here. So there's some type of internal bleeding going on, and that's when we decided to call it quits.
After a primary medical inspection, Shannon confirms that Kathy should be evacuated. They wrap her injured leg in an inflatable brace or vacuum splint to restrict movement.
As we were leaving, one of the trail crew guys had come running out of the bushes. He had run up to Nit Nat Narrows to get them a crab dinner and some salmon for the road. Hey Jeff, we're just leaving Squadron now.
Okay, great. There's 4 on board?
4 on board, 5 including Jim.
And what's your flight path back home?
While most people would consider a helicopter tour of the West Coast Trail an absolute delight, Kathy, unfortunately, is terrified of heights and flying. Shannon does her best to lessen her fears.
We'll go into the forest and follow the tree line. It's sunny up there.
After a 15-minute flight through heavy fog hanging over only the coastline, the helicopter arrives at a very sunny Port Renfrew, where Jeff and BC ambulance paramedics await.
I'm good.
Good. Yeah, how'd it go up there?
A height thing.
It's, yeah, as long as I can cry through the whole thing, I'm okay. So it made me cry through the whole thing, so I'm good.
Yeah, so we're going to come back next year. We're going to finish this thing off. We're going to get a little more strength training on the knee there.
Yeah.
It'll all be good.
Right on. That's our interaction with the, the West Coast Trail user. A lot of it is these people were taken off, and it's always sorry to see them go and see their trip cut short. And a lot of them are off to hospital to deal with something that's going to take them maybe months or who knows how long to heal and recuperate from. So they're on a long road, and it's we're always sorry to see them go.
Friday, 8:25 a.m. Jeff Caro and Rick Holmes of the Parks Canada Rescue Station in Port Renfrew are responding to a request for help near Walbrand Creek on the West Coast Trail. 12-year-old Aisha Visser is possibly hypothermic and just 3 days into the challenging 6-day hike with her father and teenaged brother.
Just got a call from her father early this morning. He's worried about her. She's been really cold for a little while. Everything she's got is wet. He says mildly hypothermic. We'll check on her for that, but they're otherwise sounds like she's having a hard time. And there's nothing she's got that's warm. It's been raining for the last couple of days. It's August, so some people just aren't prepared for it or just aren't able to manage it while they're out there. She did have a decreased level of consciousness for a period of time the night before, where she didn't know where she was, she didn't know what day it was. So she was starting to get affected that way, and those are very serious conditions, and that would be something we would like to have known the night before. So a lot of times people, when they come on the West Coast Trail, we advise them, call us when you're concerned. Don't wait too long. Tell us right away if there's something that you're worried about with someone in your group or yourself, and there's some kind of medical condition presenting itself.
The run to Walbrand in these conditions will take about 40 minutes.
I'm Cam, this is Jen.
Hi guys, how's it going?
Good.
When maintenance and administrative chores are done, the rescue teams spend a lot of time out on the trail interacting with hikers.
They've been kind of trailing behind us the whole way, and we have fires at night.
A lot of times when you're out there talking to people, you hear about somebody who's been struggling. Oh, there's so-and-so 3 days ago was struggling at this campsite, he's on his way down this way. So you start asking around. So on your shift you think, well, maybe this is something we should look into, make sure he's doing all right, pay him a visit. So we can go above and beyond just responding to the calls. There's lots of services we can offer in the field that will keep people on the trail instead of just us going out there and taking them off.
Hey guys. Have a safe trip out tomorrow. Take care.
Arriving at Walbrand, Rick stays with the rib just offshore as Jeff rows into the beach.
She was so cold. She was shivering uncontrollably. She was constantly moving. You could see she was rubbing her legs the whole time and her arms and just didn't stop moving.
Jeff immediately does a primary medical survey while her father and brother load all of the hiking equipment into the tender.
It was one of those ones that when I got on scene, all I wanted to do was just, wrap her up in as much warm stuff as I could and get her out of there.
Aisha puts on a survival suit, and Jeff ferries the family out to the rib for the journey back to Port Renfrew.
We found that her temperature is down around 35.7. She says she usually runs around 39 degrees, so it's pretty cold for her. She can't get warm. She last night spent a pretty cold night in her tent. We're transporting her to the BC ambulance when we get back to Port Renfrew. It's about a 25-minute run home. She's come from 35.7 up to 36.8 degrees, so she's in the happy zone now, and she's doing better. She's got a cup of Earl Grey tea at her request, and she's sipping away at that. Rick's getting the boat all ready for us to turn around and get back out, and that wraps that up. Good thing we brought her out, and it's a good thing her dad knew to call.
While West Coast Trail rescue work can sometimes be life or death, It's mostly rescuing people in need of medical attention who can go no further. Today, the West Coast Trail has won again, but that's okay. About 7,000 hikers will make it through just fine this season. And if any of them don't, you know who they're gonna call. Now, the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary is on the move.
When our pager goes off, we never know what kind of a tasking we're going to.
Sunday, 2 p.m. A twin-engine, rigid-hull inflatable boat slices through the waves in the Strait of Georgia. On board are 4 crew members from the Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary Unit 27 Nanaimo. They're responding to a distress call from a disabled vessel in heavy seas. Huge waves generated by gale-force winds are threatening to swamp the helpless boat. But as swiftly as winds can pick up, they're just as quick to die down, making the rescuers' trip smoother than expected. The 28-foot pleasure craft had broken down in the middle of the strait between Vancouver and Nanaimo, leaving its 2 passengers stranded in rough water for hours. Without power, the boat was pushed broadside to the large waves and rocked violently to the point of capsizing. Their urgent call for help had come at the height of the windstorm as they prepared to abandon the vessel and board small kayaks. A Canadian Coast Guard hovercraft based out of Vancouver also arrives on scene to offer assistance.
If you're comfortable towing the Coral Sea back into Nanaimo.
Confident the auxiliary crew have everything under control, the Coast Guard leave the tasking in their capable hands. The rescuers start the long trip back to Nanaimo with the powerboat in tow.
If I knew it was going to get this strong this fast, I wouldn't have come out. She was looking really nasty, like right after we had our problems. This boat was looking like she was going to roll.
This time, it was only a simple engine failure. But that isn't always the case.
When our pager goes off, we never know what kind of a tasking we're going to. Quite often, the rescue center will call on the radio looking for what we call a vessel of opportunity to help them out. But a lot of times, too, there's just nobody around, and that's when we are tasked to go out and assist them.
Typical call-outs for this Marine unit include grounded vessels, sinking ships, head-on collisions, engine fires, and people lost or missing at sea. The Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary, or CCGA, is a nationwide organization whose mandate is to support the Canadian Coast Guard in marine emergencies. But unlike the Coast Guard, auxiliary units across Canada are made up entirely of volunteers, all 5,000 of them, ready to launch 24/7. Of the 56 CCGA stations in the Pacific region, Nanaimo is one of the busiest.
We have the highest number. We're averaging 95 to 100 taskings a year. We think the reason is that we're sort of geographically positioned between Vancouver and Victoria, Comox, Desolation Sound. So there's a lot of boating traffic in the Nanaimo area, and we have a lot of visitors that are unfamiliar with our waters.
To meet the demand, the unit has recently added a new rescue boat to its fleet, a Titan fast response vessel christened the J.C. McGregor. This high-performance craft is the first and only of its kind in the world, custom designed to meet Nanaimo's search and rescue needs. The specs are impressive. An enclosed cabin with enough space for 3 stretchers and 12 people, a top-of-the-line navigation system, infrared imaging to spot people at night, 2 435 horsepower engines producing speeds up to 40 knots, and the list goes on. But its most impressive feature is this. Built to upright itself, the J.C. McGregor is virtually unsinkable. It took the unit 4 years to raise the cool $500,000 needed to acquire this ultimate rescue vessel.
But most of our funding comes from donations from different community groups. Port Authority, the City of Nanaimo, the BC Government Gaming Branch is a great supporter. So we are a volunteer organization supported by the community.
The crew gives back to its community, not only by answering emergencies, but also by patrolling public events, such as the annual bathtub race held in Nanaimo's harbor. The auxiliary is recognized as such a vital service to the city that it is asked every year by the bathtub race to be the official starting boat. 110 kilometers south of Nanaimo, in Victoria, another community event benefits from the local Canadian Coast Guard Auxiliary. Every Canada Day sees revelers taking to the water in droves. Auxiliary Unit 35, which patrols the waters around Victoria, must be ready for anything. And sure enough, a call comes in just as darkness falls. North of Victoria's downtown harbor, an unmanned vessel has been spotted drifting aimlessly and is now posing a collision hazard to other boaters. As darkness settles in, the team races off to the location. This may seem dangerous, but this crew is trained to navigate safely in all types of conditions, including zero visibility.
Victoria Coast Guard Radio, Victoria Coast Guard Radio, this is Auxiliary 1A, Auxiliary 1A.
This is where they come to practice advanced navigation techniques.
The focus of the course is on electronic navigation, radar, chart plotter, and obviously visual components as well. So they're taking all three world views, they're matching them together, and they're navigating safely and effectively. The second focus of the course is on team leadership. So they're learning bridge resource management, how to positively control their crew, their craft, and the mission all at once.
Change course again, head for Trial Island. Roger that.
So you've identified the targets and their distance. What do you think they are?
In this exercise, the crew members must come to the aid of a boat in the middle of the night. But a vessel up ahead is coming straight towards them at 20 knots.
What's the collision regulations in sight here? What do you want to do?
Yeah, we're going to turn to starboard.
They've cross-referenced to where it might be on their chart plotter. They've turned to starboard and altered to go in behind the vessel. After they've avoided the vessel and they've assessed that there's no risk of collision, they're going to come back to their course and away they go.
Located in Victoria, the RASAR is a sophisticated simulator for fast response vessels. It has two main control panels that are linked to each other. One is located inside the replica of a cockpit where the crew members train. The other is on the outside. From here, the instructor can follow the trainee's progress and give directions.
That you are scraping against the rocks. We do have the auxiliary vessel out of Victoria en route.
They are standing by on channel 16. Over.
Roger that.
The simulator mimics the controls of actual vessels in the CCGA's fleet and their movement on the water for an incredibly accurate and immersive experience.
Simulator team, your instructor, congratulations, that person has been recovered.
These subjects may be virtual, but everything else in this exercise is real.
Okay, I've got it.
Okay, reverse it.
Yeah, get us out of here.
Your exercise has been suspended by the instructor.
Simulator team, instructor, congratulations. That ends the scenario.
Come back to the debriefing station.
Lessons learned in this risk-free environment are directly applicable to real-life scenarios.
Victoria Coast Guard Radio, Victoria Coast Guard Radio. This is AUX 35 on 04 Alpha, over.
Back in Victoria's harbor, the Coast Guard Auxiliary Unit 35 crew has arrived at their destination. The unmanned vessel is drifting down the channel, scraping against rocks.
So we're just towing back this abandoned vessel here that he had his anchor down but didn't quite have enough anchor rode out. So it's just kind of drifting along until it bumped up against the Selkirk trestle. So we're doing him a favor, pull it back into some shallower water, drop the anchor again, and hopefully she'll stay this time.
The team will continue to patrol the waters until the Canada Day celebrations are over and everyone has made it through the night safely. Tomorrow, other members will be on shift, ready at a moment's notice to rush out and save lives at sea. Callout Search and Rescue features real stories filmed live by search and rescue teams during actual missions.